Your girl Empress of God is coming back at you one more again. Maybe we can get through this. We're gonna learn about reading your birth chart, right? With Maxine, I can't think of her name. But this is fair use for educational purposes.
Welcome to Astrology 101. You know, everybody loves to hear about astrology and everybody loves to hear about themselves. I am going to show you in the series of classes that I'm going to be sharing with you how to interpret the birth chart. Very, very simply. When I started studying astrology in 1966, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have computers. We used to cast the horoscope by hand, and it took hours to interpret it. And I thought at the time, there has to be an easier way because I'm about simplifying things. And sure enough, I found an easier way. So the information that I'm going to be sharing with you is found in my #1 best-selling book on Amazon. Now that I've cast it, what do I do with it? Some of you may already have a copy. I hope you'll follow along, and if you have your own birth chart, now would be a really good time to pull it out of the drawer, because what I'm going to do is start from ground zero, and I'm going to explain step by simple step how to interpret your own birth chart. I years ago asked a friend of mine why she wanted to sit in on my classes because I'd already read her chart to her, and she said, Maxine, nobody gets tired of hearing about themselves. So, if you've had your chart read, hear it again for the first time. Follow along as I take you step by step around the zodiac. Now, as you can see right over here, we have a wonderful zodiac that describes what a blank chart looks like. So let me tell you exactly what you're looking at. As you notice, the chart is divided like a pie into 12 pieces. We know it's 12 because we start here at house #1. These are called houses. These divisions are houses. And by the way, as you can see, each house deals with a different area of life. And we will run around the chart and talk about them. So we have 12 houses, and here are numbered very simply counterclockwise. And so in your own personal chart, you have 12 houses. Now, we have 10 planets, 2 nodes, and 12 houses. This means that when we actually look at the chart, some of those houses are going to be empty. That doesn't mean that part of life is devoid of any energy. It means it's simply not as important as the houses that have planets in them. We will take that, as I said, step by step. But first, let's look
Fair use, fair
at a
use.
wonderful
Federal law allows citizens to
description
reproduce,
of each of
distribute,
the
or
houses.
exhibit
Let's
portions
start, first
of
of all,
copyrighted motion,
with the first
pictures,
house. This is the most
videotapes, and video
personal
discs
point in
of
the
certain
chart. This
circumstances
is the
without
house that
authorization of the
describes your
copyright
physical
holder.
appearance, your
This is called fair
personality.
use for
It
purposes of
describes
criticism,
you
news reporting,
more than your
and
sun
filing,
sign, in
which doesn't
fact.
infringe on
And
copyright under 17
when we
U.S.
get to it,
7.
there's going to
Repeat,
be a
this is fair
sign,
use.
a zodiacal sign on each cusp, each edge. The sign that is right here, if this were a clock dial, this would be 9 o'clock. The sign that lands here called your rising sign, and that rising sign describes you more powerfully even than your sun sign. So you can see the importance of the first house. Very often there are no planets in the first house. If you've got your birth chart in front of you right now and you have an empty first house, you may be saying, does this mean I have no personality? No, not at all. What it means is this is not the lifetime in which you chose to be assertive and to take charge and to put yourself first. There's nothing wrong with doing that. There's no judgment in astrology. It simply is. And so here we have the first house. It describes you more personally than any other house. Let's move on to the second house. And this is the one everybody wants me to look at when I do their horoscopes. This is the house of money and possessions. And people can be our possessions. Chairs, tables, cash, money. Very, very important. But these possessions determine our value structure. And so if you have nothing in your second house, don't worry. It doesn't mean you're going to be living in a box under a bridge. What it means is that money per se is not part of your focus, because when we get to it, you'll see that the horoscope is a snapshot of you taken of the heavens at your exact moment of birth. And many of you know that in order to do your own chart, I have to have your exact minute of birth, the month, day, and year, and the city where you were born.
Right.
Some of you already knew that. Okay, so we're going to get to that snapshot. The third house, very, very important. This is the house that deals with communication. It's our mouth and our mind. It's what we think about, how we communicate. It deals with short trips. And if you have any planets in your third house, you know you get bored easily and you want to take short trips, and you're a talker. And if you are not programmed to express your ideas, you're certainly thinking them. The fourth house, very, very important. This fourth house is the foundation of your life. It deals with home and family. It deals with emotional security needs. And it deals with a nurturing parent, which traditionally is mother. Although nowadays, there are a lot of men who stay home while their wives go to work. So we are not sure whether it's mother or father until we actually look at the person's chart. So if you have planets in your fourth house and you've been wondering, is this my mother or my father? If I sit down with you and interpret your chart, I should be able to help you determine that, okay? So this is very, very important. People with fourth house planets love to touch base with family members. They love to touch base at home. If they go out to dinner, they will stop at home first. I used to ask a friend of mine, why do you have to go home before we go out to dinner? Are you afraid the house won't be standing? I thought I was being funny. He was taking it seriously. Okay. Fifth house, the house of fun and games. And this is all kind of fun and games. Yes, let your imagination go wild. Do you like sports? Do you love to play a musical instrument? Do you just love to sit in front of the TV with a bowl of popcorn and the remote? That's fun. Fun and games. Now, the fifth house also deals with children. So if you have children, they're going to show up in this fifth house. Very often our pets are our children.
Yep.
And I read them in the fifth house if that particular person has a pet that is like a child to them. The sixth house, very important house. This house deals with your work, your health, and your service, whatever service you provide to the planet. And when we look at this sixth house, if you have any planets in your sixth house, you're a worker. You want to be needed, you want to be busy all the time, and you don't want to just cross those T's and dot those I's. You want to be contributing. You want to feel that you're needed. In fact, if you have planets in your sixth house, if someone says to you, I need you, what they're really saying is, I love you. And I'm going to go over this again so that by the time we are finished with these shows, you're going to be able to interpret not just your own chart, but everybody else's. Okay? Seventh house, very, very important. The seventh house is directly opposite the first. The first house is you. So the seventh house deals with all of your relationships, from business relationships to personal relationships. It deals with the public. It deals with open enemies. It deals with litigation, which is very, very interesting because the seventh house deals with marriage, or at least a legal union. And so the seventh house deals with legal unions. You meet someone, you have a legal union, everything's wonderful, and then you decide, oh, this isn't working. The seventh house is the house of open enemies. And so that partner can become an adversary. And so then you take the relationship to court or to an attorney, once again the seventh house, to dissolve it. On the other hand, you may have a relationship that goes on for 20, 30, 40 wonderful years while the two of you learn about each other and help each other grow. Again, it depends on the planets in the seventh house, which we will touch on, of course. Eighth house, wow. This is the most powerful house in the entire zodiac. It deals with transformation. The eighth house is the house of secrets, and if you've got anything in your eighth house, people entrust you with their secrets. You may not want them, you get them, and you have to keep them to yourself. The eighth house is the house of power and control, and you will learn in this lifetime to let go of control and simply take charge. That's the highest version of this house. The eighth house also deals with joint finances, other people's money. And if you have anything in the eighth house, you're wonderful at helping people create money. Ninth house deals with our principles, our belief systems, our philosophy. It deals with long trips, whereas the third house deals with short trips. Can you see how it's a very balanced circle? And so anything in the ninth house helps you stand back, see the big picture. You see the forest in spite of the trees. The 10th house, oh, this is the one that the world sees. This is your public image. This is your career. A lot of people are retired and say, I don't have a career. I beg to differ. Yes, you do. It can be simply nurturing your grandchildren. It can be teaching something at a local YMCA, or it can be gardening. Whatever it is, you don't have to earn money for it. That is your public image. And the 10th house is traditionally the out front parent, the person who teaches you how to deal with the world. The 4th house parent teaches you about home and family. The 10th house parent teaches you how to deal with other people. Now, it can be your mother. It doesn't have to be the father figure. Again, it's up to you, what you chose to create in this lifetime. It is mirrored and reflected and illustrated in the chart. 11th house deals with our friends and group activities. This is the house of the humanitarian, and you're going to find that if you have any planets in the 11th house, I can tell you right now, and I'll probably say it again, you ask yourself at least once a week, am I crazy or is it crazy? Because you are so far ahead of your time, you are the humanitarian. And you see how important it is to create peace and harmony for the whole.
Yep.
Because when you do it for the whole, the individuals within the whole
100.
also feel it. Most people don't think that way. And so you have always felt that you were different.
Yep. Right on
You
point.
are.
Still on
I
point.
mean that as a compliment. Pat yourself on the back for that one. And the last house is the 12th house, and this deals with behind-the-scenes activities of all kinds. And I know your mind is going round and round on that one. All kinds. When I look at the United States chart or the chart of other countries, very often there's a huge amount of 12th house activities for obvious
I got
reasons.
Saturn in the 12th
They
house,
don't
Mars
share
in the 11th
everything.
house,
Surprise. They keep it
Jupiter
private.
and
Behind
Chiron in
the
the 9th
scenes.
house. Jupiter
Okay?
and Lilith in the
Now, it rules the subconscious, it rules the spirit world,
Uranus
and
in
if
the
you have
4th.
any planets in your 12th house, you have to have time alone at least once a day just to dream. Are you a dreamer? You can take those dreams and make them reality, because that 12th house is filled with communication with what we call the other side. And so you're a natural mystic. Okay. Now, that's the blank chart. I want to take you through the planets, and we're going to put each planet one by one in each of the houses. Follow along if you have your birth chart. Hopefully, this will be eye-opening, and you will hear it again for the first time. We're going to start with the first planet, which is the sun, obviously, because that is the sign we know. In fact, you know your sun sign. If you were born on a certain day, you know if you're an Aries or a Taurus or a Gemini. But did you know that all of the planets fall in different signs,
That's what
and they express differently because of that. So you know your sun sign. It's very rare that I find somebody in my talks who doesn't know their sun sign. They know their birthday. If they don't know their birthday,
My son's side, my
we're in
son is
trouble.
in the sixth
Okay.
house.
So the sun is the center of our universe, isn't it? I don't know if you can see that yellow. It really is pretty. Wherever the sun is the center of your life. Now, there's an esoteric interpretation as well as a psychological interpretation of each planet. The sun is the ego.
Told y'all.
And the sun is the creative force. And you might say, that's great. Now, how do we interpret that in the chart? Well, I'm going to tell you. The sun is also daddy's message to you. So, if the sun in your first house, the center of, forgetting whatever sign it's in, the center of your life is you, your body, your personality, your appearance. So you're going to say, me first, because the first house of the zodiac is a me first house. And you might say, well, that makes me sound very selfish. Oh, no, it doesn't. I want you at my next party because you're the one who lights up the room. You're able to talk about yourself. You're able to share ideas about yourself. And that breaks the ice for everyone. In other words, as I go through, I tend to be a very positive person. I'm an ordained minister with Universal Brotherhood, and I see everything as positive, even the so-called bad planets or bad aspects. There's no such animal. It's just energy, and we'll get to that in a little bit. So the center of your life is you. And your father, your daddy's message is put yourself first. This is by his presence or his absence. Either he did put himself first or he didn't. Now, some people say to me, I never met my father. I was adopted. Wonderful. Your adopted father is the one that you're looking at here, whoever you consider to be your father. Grandfathers, grandmothers very often raise children. And so it can be grandfather. However, there is a daddy involved on some level. If the father is not present, it is by his absence that he gives the child the message, you're on your own, kid, and you need to put you first. And I say, bravo. Go for it. Put yourself first. There is nothing in the chart that you want to squelch. This is your roadmap for this lifetime. Do it. Okay, let's say you have the sun in the second house of money. So the center of your life is money and possessions. And wherever this is, it lights it up. Sun is the giver of life. Now, you might be saying, well, I've got the sun in the second house, but I never seem to have enough money. What I have found is that people with a second house sun always feel that they don't have enough money. It's really funny. Does it mean they're going to win the lottery? I don't know, but it's worth a try, isn't it? Daddy's message is get the money, honey. Make sure that you get the possessions. Make sure that you hang on to things, because this is the house of things, all right? Third house. This is the house of the conscious mind. And wherever the sun is in your chart, as I said, that's the center of your life. Well, you've got great ideas. It's like you have a bulb that goes off in your head. This is to the sun in the third house. Daddy taught you to talk and certainly to think. You get bored very, very easily. You've got to be on the move at all times because this is the house of mental curiosity. This house also describes your siblings, brothers and sisters, the oldest one in particular. And I'm going to explain what I'm talking about for the advanced student in just a minute, because I'm going to go into charts within charts. This is not meant to get complex, it's meant to simplify. Okay, let's put the sun in the fourth house. Very exciting placement. Now the sun is a masculine planet, and it represents daddy. So right away we think, oh, the fourth house parent, nurturing parent, the one who taught you how to deal with family members, is your father, by his presence or his absence. However, with Sun in the fourth house, the center of your life is your home and your family and security needs. I also want to add that the fourth house is the end of life. I don't mean that moment just prior to lifting off and taking off, but I'm talking about the mature part of your life. And what that Sun in the fourth house says is it gets better and better and better. And those of you who don't have your birth chart in front of you now are probably wishing you did. And let me mention this. If you will contact me at my website, MaxineTaylor.com, tell me that you would like a printout of your chart so that you can follow along, I'll be happy to do that at no charge for you. MaxineTaylor.com. Okay. Now, let's look at the Sun in the fifth house. Wow. When I see the Sun in the fifth house, I know this is a person who loves to have fun. And they're very good at having fun. Are they an athlete? Maybe. I don't know. But fun is what it's all about. So the center of their lives is fun, creativity. They could be artistic, but they know that life is a game and they want to play it. Now, this is the house of children. And what's so interesting is that this Sun in the fifth house tells us that your child puts himself first. This is the child's first house. Remember the first house of the zodiac. This is you. This is your child's first house. And so we can say that Daddy's message was to have fun, but Daddy is a surrogate child to you. How did he teach you to have fun? He was childlike. And your first child is going to be his or her own authority figure. Hope that's not too complex. Okay, moving along. Sixth house. If you have the Sun in the sixth house, you are such a doer. The center of your life is service. It's being needed. It's being busy all the time. And Daddy's message was, get a job. But the Sun is the authority figure. The two luminaries, the Sun and the Moon, those are our authority figures. And so that Sun there says, whatever job you have, you need to be the boss. Whatever project you're working on, you need to be the boss. Okay? Makes sense, doesn't it? Now, let's talk about the seventh house of partnership. With the Sun in the seventh house, the center of your life is partnership on all levels. You've got to have that one-on-one relationship. Now, Daddy's message is get married, get married, get married. Not literally, but that's the message. Also, very often there is an emotional attachment to your father so that you are equals. Very, very interesting. The Sun in the eighth house, this is the house of transformation. And what the Sun there says is that your ego is going to undergo a transformation in lifetime, that you're able to help other people with their values and their money. It is awesome. And Daddy's message is keep private. Keep your secrets to yourself. Because anything in the eighth house is going to be transformed. The Sun in the ninth house, center of your life is the big picture, your philosophy of life, your principles. Daddy's message is go long, get on a plane and go. The Sun in the 10th house, this tells us that Daddy is the out front person. He's the out front parent. He's the one who said, be on top. Make sure that you're the boss. However, what you have probably found is that every time you climb up to the top, someone else is there already representing Daddy to you. Isn't that interesting? There's always a little catch-22 on these things. You may have noticed that. Okay, the Sun in the 11th house. I love the Sun in the 11th. Now, the center of your life then, because remember, that's what the Sun is, the center of our lives. Center of your life is friendship. But humanity. It's dealing with other people's children. If the 5th house is your children, the 11th house is other people's children. Who are other people's children? Everybody. The entire world is someone else's child. And so this is why you see the good in the whole and use it toward the betterment of the whole. It makes you a humanitarian. Okay. And Daddy's message is be a friend. And there's the sun in the 12th house. So the center of your life is nobody's business. It's private. You need your solitude and your privacy. The center of your life is very spiritual. You've got to be alone once a day just to process what's been going on. You cherish your privacy. You love it. Now, I promised to talk about charts within charts. So here we go. The 7th house is partnership. Look at it as marriage, okay? It doesn't matter what type of marriage, it is a marriage. This 7th house is your first spouse. Signs and aspects. And we're actually going to use a real, well, she has the moon even. 4 planets. That catches your eye right away. And Uranus is just a few degrees behind the ascendant. And what this says is it's all about her in this lifetime. Nothing wrong with that. It doesn't make her selfish. It's just that this is the lifetime in which she decided to do her thing. So, with so many planets already taking up room in the chart, let's keep going and see what else is going on in her life. Well, she has the moon in Cancer in the 6th house. Cancer is ruled by the moon. A Cancer moon is very nurturing, very sensitive, very emotional, very psychic. A Cancer moon is even stronger than a Cancer sun. If you give a Cancerian a gift and that Cancerian loves you, they will save the gift. They'll save the box it came in. They'll save the paper it was wrapped in, the tape it was taped with, the ribbon it was tied with. And if they don't like you, it goes straight to Goodwill because everything is emotion driven with the Cancerian. And so there is a natural maternal instinct to this singer. She is emotionally attached to her work. Her moon is in the 6th house. So mommy's message is work and serve and be busy, busy, busy all the time. And I'm sure she is. So with a Cancerian moon there, she's very nurturing and she's very emotionally tied to her work. Now, the moon rules the public. And so you can see that the public would be involved in her work. And we know that she's a singer because I told you she was a singer. So next to the moon is Jupiter. And Jupiter is also in Cancer. Now remember I told you about Jupiter. Jupiter is a lot of. Whatever it touches, there's a lot of. Well, Jupiter touches the moon. There's a lot of emotion, a lot of nurturing, a great deal of emotional attachment involved with her work. Her work is where she is nurturing. It's what she's instinctively drawn to. It's where her mother told her to look for her emotional security needs to be fulfilled. You notice, again, mother didn't say they would be fulfilled, but she said, look to wherever the moon is for your emotional fulfillment. And Jupiter says, yeah, and then some. And her work is her joy. She gets great blessings, Jupiter, from her work. Then we're going to move up in. Hey everybody, this is Maxine Taylor, Georgia's first licensed astrologer, back with you for another edition of Astrology 101. And this time we're going to be talking about the moon and Mercury. as they run around the zodiac. We're going to look at where they are in your chart. Now, you know that your sun is either a Taurus or a Capricorn sun or an Aries sun, but you may not know what sign the moon is in your chart. By looking at the chart, I can tell you what sign your moon is in. And at some point, we will go over that. But right now, let's talk about what the moon is illustrating in your chart. If the sun is daddy's message, the moon is mommy's message. The moon is our subconscious mind. It is our sense of security. And wherever it falls in your birth chart, this is where your mother told you, either by word or deed, either by her presence or her absence. This is where she told you to look for your emotional security. Now, you notice I'm not saying this is where she told you you would find it. This is where she told you to look for it. Very interesting, because there's a little catch-22 as we go around the zodiac. The moon deals with our moods, with our emotions. Think of the moon. It's flexible, it's changeable, it grows, and then it gets full, and it pops, and then it wanes, and we run out of energy on the dark of the moon, which is when we look up at the sky and we can't find the moon, and then it starts growing, and the energy grows again. So the moon rules the public as well. Well, let's personalize this, shall we? Okay, looking at the chart, if you have the moon, it looks like a sliver of moon. If you have the moon in your first house, wherever the moon is what you are instinctively drawn to. It is the part of you that says, I want to protect it. Well, in your first house, you're very self-protective, aren't you? You're going to want to protect you. You may be changeable, right? But let's talk about mommy's message. Mom says, look to yourself for your own emotional security needs. The catch-22 is that mom is already sitting there in your first house. And so she is influencing you. And she says, verbally or non-verbally, protect yourself. What she really means is do it my way. Because this first house is the most important area of the chart, in that it's the most personal point in the chart. It describes you. And so you are innately self-protective. And you say, me first. Is there anything wrong with that? No, not at all. That was mother's message to you. Let's keep on going. The moon in the second house. Well, mother's message is get the money, honey. And what she tells you is that you are to look to your things and possessions and money for emotional security. Now, again, she doesn't say you'll find it. She says look for it there. And so the moon rules the public, and perhaps you're supposed to, in this lifetime, earn your money by dealing with the public. But because the moon waxes and wanes, there can be a waxing and a waning of your own finances. Now, the second house deals with your possessions and your values. And so your mother is your possession. People with the moon in the second house feel that their mother belongs to them. There may be 5 other siblings, but people with a moon in the second house say, you belong to me. And our mother's values color ours enormously. You might say, well, isn't that true anyhow? The hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. Yes, but in the case of the moon in the second house, even more so. The moon in the third house, and I sure do hope you're following along using your own chart. Mother's message is to think, to look to your ideas for your emotional security. But the moon is emotional. And so there's a very emotional tone to your ideas. You don't just remember what happened. You remember how you felt about what happened. And so when you have planets in the third house, you have to talk, you have to communicate. With the moon in the third house, you have to communicate your emotions, the feelings of an event. And a lot of people don't understand that. If they're very left brain, they don't get it. An example of the moon in the third house expressing emotionally would be, oh, he walked into the room. I couldn't believe it. My heart started beating. Oh, and then he came over to me. Oh, that's the emotional memory. Without the moon in the third house, might not even remember him. Seriously. Okay. Moon in the fourth house. This is the moon's natural placement in the zodiac. And so when you have the moon in the fourth house, mother's message is to look to home and family for your emotional security needs. And you do. There is a very strong emotional attachment to home and family that owns you, that runs you. And you might say, well, what's wrong with that? Nothing. If it stands in your way of doing what you came here to do, then you want to look at it and determine consciously if you want to put that much attention on it. However, with the moon in the fourth house, your home and family come first to you, and your mother is the nurturing parent. And when I say come first, it's not like Mars or the sun down there, but it is a gut reaction that you can't even think with the moon, wherever the moon is, because we're going to get to Mercury in a minute. The moon, Mercury is your conscious mind. This is your subconscious mind. The moon is what comes to you instinctively. It's your knee-jerk reaction. So there's no thought involved. It's emotion. Explains a lot, don't you think? Okay, so we've dealt with the moon in the fourth, and mommy's message is look to your for your emotional security with your home and family. I almost tripped up and said find it. You won't find it necessarily, but that's what you keep doing. You keep looking for it and looking for it and looking for it and looking for it until one day you wake up and say, this isn't working. What do I want to change? And that is when you start moving forward in your spiritual evolution. This can occur when you're a child, by the way. Okay, moon in the fifth house. Well, we know that the fifth house is the house of fun and games. All right. It's enjoyment of all in every single expression. And I was trying to find a tactful way of putting it, but if you love to go to the movies, that's the fifth house. If you love to play basketball, that's the fifth house. If you like to lay out on the couch and watch TV, that's the fifth house. It's fun. Now, the fifth house is also children. And so there is an emotional attachment to children. True story, though, one of my clients has the moon in her fifth house. She's a career woman. She married and questioned whether she even wanted children because her moon is in the sign Aquarius, which tends to be a rather impersonal placement for the moon. She gave birth to a baby girl. And all of her nurturing instincts, all of her maternal instincts surfaced. And she could not, probably to this day, still cannot bear to be separated from her little girl. And so if it has not been triggered, don't worry, it will be. The moon in the fifth house is mommy's message that says play, enjoy yourself, and have children. Can you see the catch-22 from where you're sitting? The moon in the fifth house, the moon is mommy. The fifth house is children. So your mother's like a child to you. And your child is like a mother to you. I've been doing charts since 1966, and I have seen this time and time again. So if you have the moon in the fifth house, you are drawn to children, and you will nurture your parent like a child, and your child will be your mommy. The reversal of roles. Very, very interesting. Moon in the sixth house. Well, you have an instinctive need to be busy, to be needed, to have a job. And again, anything in that sixth house, if someone says, I need you, they're really saying, I love you. And so mommy's message is to be busy at all times, to have a job, to be of service. Now, with the moon, there is an emotional attachment to whatever house it is in. And so her message is to do what you really feel led to do, what you really want to do, what you're passionate about,
what you're emotional about. And so there you are with the moon in your sixth. You will be a mommy at work. And one of your employees may remind you of your mother, not because your employee looks like your mother, because it could be a male who reminds you of your mother, but it would be the emotional attachment that he represents, or she. Very, very interesting. Okay. Moon in the seventh. Well, the seventh house is partnership. It's relationships. It's the one-on-one relationship. It's also open enemies. And I'm not trying to start World War III here. But Mama's message is get married, get married, get married. Have that partnership. Look to your spouse, to your business partners, to other people for your emotional security. So what happens? You have to have that one-on-one relationship. However, the catch-22 is that there is an emotional marriage to mommy. I think I just dropped a bomb on you. The moon in the seventh says you are so emotionally attached to your mother as an equal that you're looking for mom in your relationships. And when I say you're looking for her, this is not conscious. The moon is subconscious. And there can be an adversarial relationship with mother. Why? Because the seventh house is our open enemies, not our hidden enemies, our open enemies. And the 12th house, the behind the scenes house, those are our hidden enemies because they're hidden from our own conscious mind. It's the subconscious. Moon in the 8th house. Now remember, anything in the 8th house is going to be transformed in this lifetime. It's a fabulous placement for everything that you want to reform and transform. And so your relationship with your mother role, your beliefs, your programming with your mother is going to be transformed in this lifetime. You can take that to the bank. Now, mommy's message is to look to the cause of events, the secrets behind them for your security. So you're not interested in what's going on out front, above the table. You're a detective and you're looking beneath the table to see what's really happening. You're going to the source. And the greatest secrets that we have are where we come from, birth, and where we go when we leave here, death. And so with a moon in the 8th house, it's all or nothing. You don't do things halfway because you are emotionally attached to getting to the cause of the secrets. And that's what Mama's message is. Find the secret and keep it to yourself. Moon in the 9th house. Wow. Mama's message is to expand your horizons and spread your wings and soar. Follow the sun. Chase the far horizon. Her message is you will look to your beliefs, your principles, the big picture for your emotional security. I love it there. I don't have it there. I love it there. Okay. Moon in the 10th house. Well, mother then is our out front parent. Mother's message is to look to your career. Look to being a leader for your emotional security. But the catch on that is she's already the leader. And so in your career, as you're climbing to the top, you will attract people to you who represent mother. And depending on your relationship with your mother, that's how you'll react to them. And you might say, well, why would I do that? Because it's subconscious. It's instinctive. And when you see it in your chart, that's when it starts losing hold over you. It loses power over you. And you can create it your way. The moon in the 11th house. I love this. Mama's message is be a friend. And so you are instinctively drawn to groups. You're instinctively drawn to people because the 11th house is other people's children. And as I said in our first show, who are the other people's children? the entire world. Everyone is someone else's child. And this makes you a humanitarian. But here's your catch-22. Your mother says she wants to be the friend. Look to her as your friend. And you will be a mother to your friends, a mother in groups. Very interesting. It also shows that you are looking to your friends to be mom. All this is subconscious. Can you see how powerful this is? And the last placement for the moon, the 12th house of the subconscious. We have the subconscious mind, the moon, in the 12th house of the subconscious. You can see that there's a lot of processing that goes on subconsciously that you may not even be aware of. But Mama's message is pull back and retreat and give yourself privacy at least once a day. And so there is a very strong influence of Mother, particularly when she leaves the earth, because then she will be in the spirit world and she will be communicating, encouraging you to listen within. Listen to that little voice that's speaking to you. Listen to the divinity within you. So that is the moon through the signs. And I hope that you have found that part interesting. That's the subconscious mind. Well, let's deal with a conscious mind. The next planet that we'll be dealing with is Mercury. And Mercury is our conscious mind. Wherever Mercury is in your birth chart, that's what you think about and talk about. So let's do Mercury. All right, this is a very simple one. My handwriting is horribly illegible. Mercury's supposed to look something like that. I put it in blue because it's the conscious mind. So wherever Mercury is what you think about and talk about. Is this going to be easy or what? All right, Mercury's in your first house. You think about yourself and you talk about yourself. Now, you remember I told you that if you have first house planets, I want you at my next party because you're the one who's going to break the ice. Mercury in the first house is not shy about talking about themselves. This is great on a social level, don't you think? Okay, Mercury in the second house. Again, my handwriting, I apologize. You think about money and you talk about money. Well, this is really cool. You think about your possessions and what you have and how you can get more of them. And you bring great ideas to money-making projects. Isn't that cool? Now, Mercury, let me try and do this so it's legible, sort of. Mercury in the third house is really strong because that is its natural house in the zodiac. And so you think and you talk. Whatever crosses your brain, you may not have a filter. It depends on what sign Mercury is in. And we'll do that in future shows. But whatever crosses your brain, you're going to express. So you're a talker. And if you were programmed not to share your ideas, not to talk, your mind is going round and round and round and round the whole time. And even if you don't say anything, you've got that mind going. You may even have a smart crack to say, but you keep it to yourself. Mercury in the fourth house, you think and talk about your home and family. You consciously want to be with family members. You're the one who sends Christmas cards to family members. With Mercury up here in the 11th, you send them to your friends, if you even think about it, because the 11th house is the humanitarian. That doesn't really deal with details per se. So you think about your family and you talk to family, you communicate with them. It's a great placement, I think. All right. Mercury in the fifth house. Well, you think about fun and you talk about it. And talking is fun to you, right? You have a child, if you have children, who is a thinker and a talker. I remember doing a chart on a lady, and she had a bunch of planets in the fifth house. And when I got to Mercury, I said, your child is really a talker. She said, oh, that's an understatement. The boy is a motor mouth. And that's what happens because this is your child's first house. It's your fifth house of children. It's your child's first house. So you think about creative projects. You think about parties to throw. You think about your kids. And, you know, if you have a packed fifth house and you have children, my suggestion is when they're little, combine your fun with theirs, and it will amplify both. Mercury in the sixth house. Okay, Mercury in the sixth house is very powerful because that is Mercury's natural house. Now, did you remember I just said it was the third house of the zodiac? It's both of them. Mercury rules the third house and the sixth house because Mercury is the ruler of Gemini, which is, this is for the advanced people, is the ruler of the third house, and it's the ruler of Virgo, which is the natural ruler of the sixth house. So in your work with Mercury in the sixth house, you've got to communicate. You're probably a teacher, a thinker, you want to travel. Mercury gets bored easily. Even depending on the sign it's in, it's still going to get bored. And so you think about your job. You're the one who can't fall asleep right away because your mind is going around and round and round with ideas that you want to implement at work. Well, that's really cool. Okay. Mercury in the seventh house. You think about your partner and you talk about your partner. Is this a business partnership, a personal partnership? Yes, and yes. You go out there to other people and you want to talk with them. And they will talk because the other people in your life, the significant others, are ruled by this seventh house. So your seventh is their first house, and you attract talkers. You attract people who talk about themselves. And guess what? You get to listen. And they love you for it. Because when you put the other people in your life first, if you have planets in your seventh house, you attract people who put themselves first. And so if you will put them first, it will work out beautifully. They'll love you. Now, if you also have planets in your first house, this can create a problem, right? Because you want equal time. And if the partnership is a balanced one, you will each have equal time. If not, it can be a pulling apart. Okay? Mercury in the eighth house of transformation. Oh my goodness. Mercury in the eighth house is going to undergo a transformation. In this lifetime, your thinking is undergoing a transformation, and you are a detective. You want to look beneath the surface at what's going on. That eighth house is the secrets of the zodiac. Mercury in the ninth house, you think big thoughts. You think of higher education, travel, and you love to communicate with people at a distance. Mercury in the 10th, you think about a career. You think about being on top. And when you are on top, you need to communicate. So you're a sharer of information. Mercury in the 11th house, you think about your friends. You talk to your friends. And you attract to you very talkative friends. And Mercury in the 12th, you may not even be aware of it, but what you think about has to be filtered through the subconscious first. Your subconscious mind has to approve of it, so to speak. And so before you can give an answer to something, you have to sleep on it to find out if you're going to do it or not, to decide if you're going to. Now, very often we have a retrograde Mercury. You may have heard about that. That's when Mercury appears to be moving backwards in the heavens. It is not. It only appears to be moving backwards. But things here on planet Earth are confused. When we have a retrograde Mercury, this is the time that you do not begin new projects, but instead you tie up the loose ends of unfinished projects. You don't sign contracts during this time. Instead, you plan. Because once Mercury comes out of retrograde, once it goes direct and begins to appear moving forward, what you thought you wanted, you may not want anymore. And that's just how it is. So what you'll do is be aware that about 3 times a year, Mercury's going to go retrograde. You will know it because the car breaks down, the computer doesn't work, all kind of machinery starts failing on you. And a word to the wise. Yes, you're not supposed to start a new project. But if your car breaks down in the middle of the road and you need that car to complete your journey, you buy a car, even though Mercury is retrograde. If your refrigerator dies, you have to have a new one. So consider the new purchase simply the tying up of loose ends.
Hello, our topic is an interest.